Want to relive the glory of college football?
Balls over a man, into the end zone.
Come explore TuneIn's classic game replay collection to hear ESPN's complete coverage of the 2019 New Year's 6 bowl games. Don't miss your chance to re-experience the Rose Bowl, the 2020 National Championship, featuring Clemson and LSU.
There's going to be 2 champions on the field tomorrow night. There's going to be 1 team hold up the trophy.
10, to the 5, touchdown!
Search classic game replays to listen for free.
With the NHL season temporarily on ice, now is a good time to catch up on past games. With Game Replay on TuneIn, you can hear every matchup of the 2019-2020 season so far. And for a limited time, it's free for hockey fans everywhere. Search classic Game Replays to start listening.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Headlines and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on QuickTake by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Good morning from Bloomberg's World Headquarters in New York City. I'm Anne-Marie Hordern with this Bloomberg Radio Business Flash. U.S. equity index futures are pointing to a higher start in New York this morning. The S&P 500 mini futures up nearly 0.9%. In Europe, while we were decisively lower, we are now mixed picture across the board. FTSE 100 is in the green, eking out a little bit of a gain, but the CAC 40 down nearly 0.4%. The DAX is flat and Spain's IBEX down 0.2%. The Stock 600 is in the green, but let's call it flat. Auto parts, insurance, travel, leisure, banks, though, are heavy weightings to the downside. All those sectors down more than 1%. In currencies this morning, we are seeing a stronger euro against the U.S. dollar, 1.09, and cable this morning, 1.22. In commodities, I'm looking at oil. We are snapping up that 4-day rally, although WTI Brent is relatively flat. We are trading at $32 a barrel. Brent crude, $34.83. We're seeing a bit of stabilization for sure in the oil market. And then gold this morning is higher, up nearly 0.3%, trading above $1,700 an ounce. The Bloomberg Radio Business Flash, and here's Leanne Garens with more on what's going on around the world. Good morning, Leanne.
Good morning, Anne-Marie, and thank you. Coronavirus cases have exceeded 4.8 million globally and deaths top 323,000. These figures come as Brazil recorded its deadliest day, solidifying its status as the world's new coronavirus hotspot. Yesterday, 1,179 people died in Latin America's biggest economy and cases surged. In the past few days, Brazil has overtaken Spain, Italy, and the UK, and now only trails Russia and the US in confirmed infections. President Donald Trump says he's considering a ban on Brazilians traveling to the US. South Asia is bracing for the biggest storm over the Bay of Bengal in 20 years. Authorities in India and Bangladesh are evacuating more than 5 million people to safer places. Cyclone Amphan is expected to have wind speeds of over 200 kilometers per hour. Bangladesh has raised its warning to the highest level. And finally, arise Sir Tom. Captain Tom Moore is to be knighted for his fundraising efforts after a special nomination from the UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson. The 100-year-old war veteran raised more than £32 million for NHS charities by completing 100 laps of his garden. The knighthood, which has been approved by the Queen, will be formally announced later today. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on QuickTake by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Leanne Garens. This is Bloomberg. Matt.
First of all, that is awesome.
It is awesome.
That guy is so cool, Tom Moore. Such a good person and a hero even before this. And to be knighted, I mean, it's fitting. He deserves it. But let me ask you a question. What do you mean approved by the Queen? Isn't the Queen the only one who can make someone a knight?
Well, I think what happens is he was nominated by Boris Johnson, who is the Prime Minister. So you get nominated first. That's my understanding of knighthoods. And then
there's
the
a
Queen
committee as well, isn't there?
And there's a committee, and the Queen makes the ultimate decision as because she's the queen. I mean, what else can I say?
Right.
Really?
Well, yeah. No, she's the sovereign. But there have been some. So he joined some really cool company. I think Mick Jagger is a knight, right?
So Mick.
But listen, what's more amazing about this is how quick it was. Because you remember, we didn't really know anything about Captain Tom Moore, even though he has had a great history in our armed forces here in the UK. But it was only in April that he started the fundraising. He just wanted to raise £1,000 for the NHS after he had hip surgery. And now he's already been nominated to become a knight. So that's super quick in terms of, the UK's outline, really.
Right. Well, I mean, he did a lot for the country even before that.
When are you going to become Sir Matt?
During the World War, for example. I am, sadly, that's an honor I'm sure I'll never earn. And
work in progress.
And another person who probably will never be knighted is Nathan Hager. He is standing by.
That is a near certainty.
This morning. It could happen, I guess. What have you got, for example, on your program today?
I think even if we're naturalized, we probably couldn't be knighted, could we? Just because we're Americans, we're rebels, right? I mean,
is that the case? You can't be American?
That's a chink in our armor right away, isn't it?
I don't think so. I think you can be nominated for...
Can't call yourself Sir, though, right?
No, you probably would have to have dual citizenship, I imagine.
Yeah.
I'm trying
Someone out there will correct me on Twitter and tell me what the rules are around being knighted.
I mean, I know that Mike Bloomberg, the owner of Bloomberg LP, which owns Bloomberg Radio, is at least an honorary knight. I think he got an honorary knighthood.
Yeah, I think
he is fully American, so,
Yeah,
I'll definitely call him Sir.
Yes. Good choice. Nathan, what do you got on your program coming up?
We're focused on the chairman, Jerome Powell, and his latest comments on Capitol Hill, pushing the need for more fiscal support to get through the coronavirus crisis, but not taking sides when senators ask him about it on when to do it or how much. Meantime, the moves we've already seen from the Fed on its balance sheet have affected credit markets. We're going to talk about it all with Ben Emmons of Medley Global Advisors. Plus, we're looking at the race for a vaccine. Early excitement about Moderna's phase 1 trial is now giving way to questions about whether investors might have gotten ahead of themselves. We're going to get a scientific perspective on that from Andy Pekosh of the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health. And Greg Vallier of AGF Investments is with us to look at the president's response to the pandemic and whether he's playing to his base. Join me and Karen Moscow for all that coming up on Bloomberg Daybreak, sir.
That's what politicians do, right? They play to their base, so it wouldn't be unexpected, especially in an election year.
Yeah, 6 months away from it.
Exactly, and that will be a fascinating story. This is like an incredibly important election year for Germany, but I'm afraid that the U.S. election is going to override that to some extent in terms of media coverage. In any case, we will bring it all to you here on Bloomberg Radio. You'll hear it all on Daybreak Americas as well. It's just coming up next. If you're tuned in the city, though, in London on DAB Digital Radio, you'll hear Bloomberg Surveillance.
Right, but before that, let's get to our guest this hour. Joyce Chang is standing by, Chair of Global Research at JP Morgan. Joyce, thank you so much for joining us this morning. I want to talk a bit about your perspective on the markets. Your team's been arguing that April's relief rally in the equity markets has stalled. You've downgraded corporate credit to neutral. Tell us what your view is now as Europe begins to unwind the lockdown and the US trying to get back to work too. The focus is very much on the virus, but what does it mean for markets?
Well, I think we've gone from the acute phase to the chronic phase of this crisis, and what everybody is seeing is that this is going to take a while to work out, and very much the income, the balance sheet costs are ones that are going to be enduring. So when we take a look at the impact of the COVID-19 crisis at the end of 2021, we still think that you're going to be about 4% of GDP below where you were pre-pandemic. So you had this massive relief rally, but now I think you're going into the stage that I would characterize as more malaise and more of a chronic phase rather than an acute phase. We're still going to see a big bounce in the second half of the year in the growth numbers, but it's not just the GDP growth numbers that we look at because you can't really measure that in units. We're looking at employment. And here, this is where the need for more fiscal stimulus, support for small and medium enterprises, all of these measures are still ones that will need to play out. So I think it's more of we're done with the bounce. We're into more of the malaise chronic phase now.
I wonder if you think all the stimulus is priced in, and you are based in New York, but here in Europe, it seems like this could be a major turning point, not just in terms of stimulus, but in terms of countries finally working more closely together and agreeing to share some of the burden. Is it all priced in, Joyce?
I don't think it's all priced in, and we're not bearish on the market here. We don't see a scenario where you go back to the lows, but I agree with you that in Europe some of the news has been a lot more encouraging. So even though debt neutralization isn't possible, the fact that Macron and Merkel have come to a declaration with the European Commission that they would actually be willing to neutralize the recovery fund, that's very positive. The German numbers have also been very positive. But here's the big difference between the U.S. And Europe. In Europe, we only see a 3% increase in unemployment this quarter. I mean, in the U.S., it was more than 11%, and we think that's undercounted because you've got a lot of 6 million workers who are employed but not working. So big differences between the U.S. and Europe on the employment story.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you make then, and how much will the Merkel-Macron aid assist Europe in perhaps continuing to bounce back, not suffer as many job losses briefly?
Well, I think that the agreement is a very good first step, because I think one of the big tail risks was, are you going to see Europe not able to hold together? So even if the amount of money is not massive in the scheme of things, it's still symbolically very good that it sees that everybody can see that cooperation is in place. Yeah. So I think that's really what the market has been responding to. So we do see turning points with respect to the reopening. What you're through is the peak of the infection rate in most of the advanced economies, but you're still in this malaise chronic phase, and the persistence of the numbers from coming down that markedly from here is I think what the market's going to focus on.
Joyce, I want to know what you think of the debate, reopening versus stimulus. Is that also a fair question? I'm sure you're going to be asked that on Surveillance next, so I'll just tell listeners to stay tuned if they're in London on DAB Digital Radio. Otherwise, flip over to the television.
Pressure on profits? Call GEP.
Where will 2020 take you? Somewhere where people care about each other, about our planet, about creating a better world for everyone, and becoming the best versions of yourselves. Join a community of like-minded individuals at the University of Winchester. Make sure to accept your offer by the UCAS deadline and visit our website to find out more. See the bigger picture. Be the difference. Go to winchester.ac.uk.
This is an important update from the government about coronavirus symptoms and testing. If you have any one of the following symptoms, a high temperature, a new continuous cough, loss of taste or smell, you can now get tested. Do not leave home for any reason other than to get tested. Find out how to get a test and how long to isolate at nhs.uk/coronavirus. Stay alert. Control the virus. Save lives.
Greetings! Do you, like Sergey, get glitchy camera every time you're on the video chit-chat?
Hello? Hello? Can anyone hear me?
Well, you are in need of better internet.
No, nobody. Oh, there we are. No.
Otto Sergey checks your broadband speed and helps you look for a better deal on faster broadband.
Am I frozen? Or is everyone else frozen? Oh.
And he is my head of IT. Find better, faster broadband, so compare the market.
4 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio.
Live from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studios, this is Bloomberg Daybreak for Wednesday, May 20th, 2020. Coming up this hour.
U.S. futures rise following the late-day Wall Street sell-off.
Questions mount about the effectiveness of a possible coronavirus vaccine.
The Fed issues minutes from its April policy meeting.
And the negative rate debate intensifies as UK inflation slows to a 4-year low.
President Trump calls the numerous coronavirus cases a badge of honor. Plus, the MTA will use ultraviolet light to help remove COVID-19 2019. I'm Michael Barr. More ahead.
I'm John Stashower in sports. More on the arrest of the Giants' DeAndre Baker and news of the first post-virus sporting event to take place in New York.
That's all straight ahead on Bloomberg Daybreak. On Bloomberg 1130 New York, Bloomberg 99.1 Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 106.1 Boston, Bloomberg 960 San Francisco, Sirius XM 119, and around the world on BloombergRadio.com and via the Bloomberg Business app.
Good morning, I'm Karen Moscow.
And I'm Nathan Hager. Bloomberg Daybreak brought to you by SEI. Asset managers don't get results that are off the charts when their solutions are off the shelf. Learn how SEI's operating platform can turn infrastructure into a competitive advantage at SEIC.com/IMS.
It is 5:01 on Wall Street, and futures are on the rise this morning. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures up 25 points, Dow futures up 228, NASDAQ futures up 82. The DAX in Germany is little change. 10-year Treasury down 3/32, yield 0.69%, yield on the 2-year 0.16%. NYMEX crude oil is up 0.25% or 9 cents at $32.05 a barrel, and COMEX gold is up 0.3% or $5.40 at $17.50.90 an ounce. Nathan.
Karen, thanks. We'll have more on the markets in just a minute. First, let's get the very latest on the fight to combat the coronavirus. Live with Bloomberg's John Tucker. Good morning, John.
Good morning, Nathan. Worldwide, cases have now topped 4.8 million, with deaths exceeding 323,000. U.S. cases rose 1.6% from the day before to over 1.5 million. The number of dead in the U.S. exceeds 91,000. President Trump praised the country's testing efforts.
So if we were testing 1 million people instead of 14 million people, we would have far fewer cases, right? So I view it as a badge of honor. Really, it's a badge of honor. It's a great tribute to the testing and all of the work that a lot of professionals have done.
Meantime, euphoria on a possible new vaccine by Moderna faded, and that was in large part responsible for the late market sell-off yesterday. At least one Wall Street analyst concluded that nobody knows if the vaccine works yet. One health publication cited the lack of a press release from the U.S., which partnered with Moderna on the vaccine trial. John Tucker, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, John, thank you. Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell is reiterating his stance. The central bank is ready to use all the weapons in its arsenal to help the economy endure the pandemic. He did, however, stop short of calling for that fiscal aid immediately.
I wanted to call out a risk there, which was the risk of longer-term damage to the economy. And that's what I was doing. And I said we may need to do more, and Congress may as well.
Powell testified with Stephen Mnuchin at a virtual hearing of the Senate Banking Committee yesterday. The Treasury Secretary warned of significant harm to the economy if shutdowns are prolonged. Mnuchin was asked about the safety of Americans returning to work.
We don't intend to send anybody back to work without the protections, and I would say I was prepared to come there today. I thought it was safe to testify. Matter of fact, I already was at the Senate this morning wearing a mask, and I assure you, both myself and everybody on the task force, the vice president and others, are following the best medical advice.
Boston Fed President Eric Rosengren also addressed the safety issue in an interview with Bloomberg's Michael McKee.
Consumers have to be comfortable actually going to businesses and buying stores, going to restaurants. Employees have to feel comfortable going on the subway, the train, or a bus. And with community spread still continuing in Massachusetts, I think we are a little ways away from that point.
Rosengren says he expects the jobless rate to rise to near 20%.
And we'll get more insight from the Fed this afternoon when minutes of the April policy meeting are released. Bloomberg's Vinny Del Giudice reports.
The Fed maintained a near-zero interest rate target in April following a pair of emergency rate cuts in March. Bloomberg Economics says meeting minutes will likely reflect forceful guidance by Fed Chair Jerome Powell and others opposing negative interest rates. Tuesday, Powell told the Senate Banking Committee the Fed will use all its financial tools to help the economy endure. Separately, a San Francisco Fed study sees high unemployment well into next year. Vinny Del Giudice, Bloomberg Daybreak.
Vinny, thank you. The Labor Department says it will permanently end the practice of giving news media early looks at market-moving economic data. We get more from Bloomberg's Charlie Pellet.
The pre-briefings have been suspended because of the coronavirus pandemic. Bureau of Labor Statistics Commissioner William Beach said in a letter emailed to news organizations, quote, continuing security, resource, and equity concerns outweigh, quote, any benefit